For anyone who studies wartime gear long enough, there's a moment when you come across an object so brilliantly simple, so stubbornly durable, that it forces you to rethink everything you know about outdoor equipment. The World War II shelter half, the humble piece of canvas carried by soldiers across Europe, North Africa and the Pacific, belongs to that category. This thing wasn't just a rain cover. It wasn't a convenience item. It was a literal lifeline dragged through artillery blasts, trench mud, winter storms, and bombing raids. Troops relied on it because it never failed them, and that kind of reliability earns respect. Modern survivalists chase ultralight synthetics and reflective space fabrics, but the armies of the 1940s marched with a rugged cloth that could still put many modern tarps to shame. When you study its design closely, you start realizing that the gear we think is new usually traces back to something far older, far more tested, and far better proven. And that's what we're diving into today. Not nostalgia, not reenactment props. A real piece of field engineering so practical that anyone who camps, hikes, homesteads or preps can apply its lessons right now. This isn't about collecting old gear. It's about rediscovering a material that survived war zones and still has a place in the world today. The shelter half was born from the need for absolute reliability. The World War II shelter half, often called the pup tent, wasn't issued as a full shelter. Each soldier carried one half, complete with grommets, buttons and heavy duck canvas. Two soldiers would connect their halves to form a complete tent. This system reduced weight per person, standardized equipment and ensured that shelter could be assembled even if one soldier lost his gear. The cloth itself was tightly woven cotton canvas, impregnated with a wax-based treatment. It resisted rain, wind and abrasion in ways that plastic simply doesn't. The purpose wasn't comfort. The purpose was survival. In campaigns where troops were constantly on the move or thrown into improvised defensive positions, the shelter cloth had to endure rough terrain, snares of barbed wire, and the shock blasts of incoming fire. Modern tarps, with their thin polyethylene and corner grommets that rip under stress, rarely survive a season of heavy use. Meanwhile, the World War II canvas survived entire campaigns. The durability came from materials designed for punishment, not convenience. The secret behind its longevity is found in its construction. The canvas was woven thick and coated to repel water while still allowing breathability. Cotton fibres swell when wet, tightening the weave and increasing weather resistance. This gave soldiers protection from sudden downpours or snow, while avoiding the condensation problems that plague synthetic shelters. The stitching was equally robust. Instead of heat-sealed edges prone to splitting, each seam was double-stitched and reinforced to prevent unravelling. Even the buttons, simple metal or reinforced plastic, were chosen because they wouldn't fail under freezing temperatures or rough handling. To put it simply, the shelter half wasn't made to be light. It was made to survive. A good way to appreciate this is to compare it with a modern budget tarp after one season in the sun. Ultraviolet light breaks down plastic fibres, wind stress tears grommets out of the corners, and sudden impacts create holes. Meanwhile, wartime shelter halves from 1943 are still sold today in usable condition. That is a testament to the material. The design allowed soldiers to improvise far beyond just tents. What made the shelter cloth legendary wasn't only its toughness, but, its versatility. Soldiers used it as a tent, ground cloth, stretcher, emergency poncho, camouflage screen, pack cover, and in some cases even as a makeshift sail for small water crossings. Because the fabric held shape and tension, it could be tied, folded, laced, or staked in dozens of ways. Think of a scenario today. You're out hiking and weather rolls in unexpectedly. A modern tarp works fine in calm rain, but in wind-driven storms, plastic flaps loudly and eventually tears. A World War II-style canvas shelter can be stretched tight between two trees, tied off to stakes, and reinforced with dead wood or even rocks without fear of ripping. It becomes not just a cover, but, a proper barrier. Many homesteaders and bushcrafters who experiment with canvas discover that you can heat a space under canvas. A small fire reflector, proper ventilation, and heavy canvas create a warm, wind-tight shelter where synthetic tarps would melt or deform. You can apply the principles of the World War II shelter cloth in practical ways today. You don't need an original shelter half to use this knowledge, Modern heavy canvas tarps, treated with wax or oil, still follow the same principles and perform with the same reliability. To recreate the World War II performance, you can start with a 10 to 12 ounce canvas tarp. Treat it with wax or oil, fold the edges and stitch reinforcement along stress points. For field use, a simple method is to set up a low A-frame with 2 ridgeline ties, stake the corners deep, and use a centre stick for tension. This creates a wind-resistant shelter that feels solid rather than fragile. If you're working in a wooded area, tie one end down as a lean-to and use cut branches as structural supports, just as soldiers did when they lacked proper poles. Another practical example. If you need a durable ground cloth while camping, a canvas section prevents moisture seep through without sliding around like synthetic tarps. And during cold seasons, canvas blocks wind far better, making any fire reflector more efficient. The value of the World War II design lies in understanding that, durability is sometimes more important than convenience. In survival situations or long-term camping, gear that can't fail is far more valuable than gear that saves an ounce of weight. The shelter half survived bombing raids because it was built for war, not for comfort. One of the most remarkable historical notes is how often these shelter halves were found intact after artillery strikes or bombing runs. Not because they were magical, but because their low profile, thick weave, and ability to be anchored tightly meant they didn't flap, catch wind, or shred easily. Soldiers often returned to find their gear blasted, scattered, scorched, but the canvas was still usable. It wasn't fireproof, but it resisted sparks and embers far more effectively than plastics ever could. That resilience is the real lesson. When gear is built to endure, not impress, it becomes something you can trust with your life. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten field gear, make sure to subscribe and share. For history lovers, survival students, and anyone who takes craftsmanship seriously, the World War II shelter cloth stands as a reminder of what real durability looks like. If you want more content like this, detailed, practical, and grounded in real historical knowledge. Be sure to subscribe, share this guide with a fellow enthusiast, and stay tuned for the next episode on In the Beginning.